Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC Guy. Today I want to go back and take a look at the static grass applicator that I showed you how to build over, I think, 3 different videos. And then after we take a look at some of the additional modifications that I've made to make it even more efficient, I'm going to show you how to make grass tufts and flowers using this static grass applicator. So let's get started. Okay, before we get started, I want to ask you to take a second to subscribe. Click on the subscribe box, and when that comes up, click on the little bell right next to it and click all. Well, I'm sure some of you are wondering, what about the second part of the DC versus DCC comparison that I started a week ago? Well, for various reasons, I wanted to move on and do something with the static grass applicator today, and then I'll probably put together a bonus video for early next week to finish off the DCC part of that comparison, and then we'll wrap it up with the pros and cons of each. But for now, I want to do something with this guy because I've been playing with it and I think I've improved it even more, and then we'll go ahead and make some things with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you remember the last time we looked at the static grass applicator, it still had this Rubbermaid storage container as the basket to hold the static grass. And so I felt that was a little bit small and a little bit confining. So I decided to go ahead and go to the larger ice cream container bottle that I showed you, I believe, in that last video. But at any rate, I took this one off, and this is the larger version that I have added. I'll give you a side-by-side comparison of how much larger that really is. But you can get an idea from that it does give, a little bit greater capacity, a little bit more room for shaking the static grass to break up any little clumps and get it, into that static electric field before it falls out. So what else have I done? Well, in addition to this guy here, another thing that I've done is, you'll note that I'm using the same size screen. This is just plain old window screen material for one of the caps. And for those occasions where I might want to use something like 12mm static grass, I went to this much larger 1/4-inch hardware cloth material. And so that gives you a much greater capacity to dump a lot of static grass out onto a field or whatever when you want to really apply a lot of it. And let me tell you, it comes out in great amounts. So this one, I'm not sure that I'll ever use it, because I also figured out that I'm not going to be wanting to use 12mm static grass, because when you think about it, in HO scale, you're looking at 3.5mm is equal to a foot. So 7mm static grass is 2 feet tall in HO scale. So with 12mm, you're getting up somewhere close to 3-4 feet tall. And I just don't think I'm ever going to need that. Maybe if you're going to be doing a hay field or a wheat field or something like that, you might need that tall static grass. But for the most part, I've pretty much decided I like the 6mm size best for the longest. And I also have 2 and 4mm to work with. So I ended up mainly using this window screen material. It seems to do a pretty good job, as I'll show you. Now, another thing, the last time I went to the hobby shop, I took a look at one of the commercial static grass applicators made by Woodland Scenics. And one thing that I noticed internally that got my attention was, if I can get this up here where you can see it, right in here there's a thing, this brass circle here, and notice it's got these little projections on it, like so it looks like a crown. And so that's what they had on the inside. So I came home and I cut out a brass disc out of some brass sheet that I had on hand, and then cut the little projections for the crown and installed that in there behind the brass washer that I already had there. So this, I think, after I did some experimenting, I'm convinced that this does work and adds a lot more to the static electric field. While I had the static grass applicator torn apart to put this new bottle on it, I did some other work. And if you remember, after I put this all together, the little red LED did not work. And I figured probably the wire got broken off when I pushed everything in. And sure enough, that's what had happened. So I put in a new LED, and now when I push the button, I don't know if you can see that, but it does light up now. So now I have a visual indicator that the static grass applicator is receiving its current and should be working. So just having that little light there is a nice positive feedback, so you know that your device is being powered. So let's take a look then at what we can do with this. I started with some of the 6mm medium green static grass from Woodland Scenics, and then I mixed in some of the light green 4mm. So I've got a mixture of 4mm and 6mm static grass. And this is one of the things that I wanted to experiment with, was because I do like these blends. I like blends of colors and blends of different height. Because the previous stuff that I had been working with from Notch was a 4 and 6mm blend of grasses too. And I really liked the way that turned out. So let's dump a bunch in here, and we'll take a look at how this works. One of the things that I really like to use are these Silflor buffalo grass tufts. And you can buy a package of these, and they pull apart, and it's very nice. But I wanted to be able to work with different blends and different size combinations, different color combinations, all of that. And so that was one of the reasons that I really started to build and work with the static grass applicator. So what I wanted to do was to be able to duplicate these. So what I figured out was, I take this little tray here. Now this, as you can see, was a small metal container that my dog's flea collar came in. And so it's a good size to work with. And I just took and cut out a circle of plain old wax paper. And that sits right down in here in the opening in that little, the lid. Now let me point out one other thing here. Before you start using this with your static grass applicator, if you buy something, or if you have find a tin like this that has paint on it, make sure to sand the edge, because I forgot to do that. And then I was trying to get this thing to work, and it wasn't doing a very good job. So then I figured, oh, wait a minute here, this has got paint all over it. So I sanded it down, got it down to bare metal, and then I added my ground alligator clip, and it works great now. So remember to do that if you're going to try this out. Okay, so the next thing I did then was I got my bottle of plain old Elmer's glue all, and we're going to use that as the base for our my clumps here. And so it's simple matter to then just take that and let me get it down here. And we'll go ahead and just put in some little puddles of Elmer's glue. I'm not going to do a bazillion of these, it's not necessary. And you can smear it out and do all kinds of other things to get different shapes. You can have two of them that are interconnected to make pull-apart clumps like the Silflor ones do. You can make very small ones, you can make very large ones, whatever. I'm going to make it bigger than that. And then I'm going to set that aside. And at this point, all we have to do is take the alligator clip, that's our ground here, and I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to start applying the static grass in here. Now, one thing I suggest you do that I almost forgot, get yourself a container to put this in. This white plastic container is what I've been using, because this stuff it ends up going everywhere. Now, I'm not going to be able to do this for the video because I can't get out far enough with it. But for general use, put it in some kind of a container, because literally you will be picking up static grass all over the place if you don't. So I'm going to just put it right here on the tabletop and try to confine it as much as possible here. And then I'm just going to flip it over and start applying the static grass. And you'll see it really comes out in large amounts here, even with this window screen version. And it's going on thick here. Okay. That's all there is to that. Now I'm going to set that aside somewhere. Here we go. And as you can see, there's static grass all over the top of the tabletop here. So I'm just going to sweep that all together into a pile and pick it up in a minute, because I'm not done here yet. Okay. Then I'm just going to reach down in here and try to lift this up. And so that gives you an idea of the density you can get. Now you can come back in here right away and do another application if you want to get it a little bit denser. And now that I've reloaded, I'm going to put this back in here. And now let's do that again. There we go. Now, let me set that aside again. And we'll pick it up. Okay, so that came out a little bit thicker. There. Let me move this to the side and get this static grass out of the way. So now I have this sheet of various sizes of grass clumps. And here are some others I can show you. Okay, so you can see I've got a couple of large ones here, one very large one, you know, an intermediate size, and then I have a whole bunch here. Let me move this aside and I'll show you. I have a whole container here full of different sizes of these guys. So you can just turn these out in various colors and different variations of thicknesses as you desire. Then once the glue has had a chance to dry, and I usually let it sit overnight, then it's a simple matter to just take a pair of tweezers and pop it underneath of the glue, and that's it. And you've got another small one here. These are some small ones I experimented with first, but it's easy to pop them off of here, like so. Once you get used to it, you can just knock them off real fast. And then when you get ready to use them, all you have to do is pick them up, put a drop of your Elmer's glue or any other PVA glue on the bottom and stick it down, and that's all there is to it. So these are very easy to use, very easy to make, and I think they're some of the most effective ways of doing little weed patches, and I've used them a number of places here on the Piedmont Southern. Now, another thing, though, that you can do with these that can be quite interesting is to use them to make flowers. So let me show you how I want to go about doing that. So let me zoom in just a touch. There, that's good. And I've got a little container of diluted Elmer's glue. And, you know, you want it kind of watery because we're going to use it for a special purpose. And then I'm going to take one of my little tufts here. And you want some that have got, some fibers that are sticking straight up as well as flaring out. And just take a little bit of that glue. And we're going to paint just the tips of some of these fibers here. Like that. And then I have here some Woodland Scenics ground foam. Now these are Woodland Scenics flowers. They're T48 is the number. And they come with 4 different colors in a pack. So I got red and yellow, and there's white, and there's an orange color as well. So you can use it to make these different colors of flowers. So let's take a look at how that works. So what you want to do then is get a little pinch of the red. I'm going to just make red flowers first. And just, sift a little bit onto that glue that you've applied. And then we're going to tap it. And what you end up with is some poppies, okay? I guess that's what that would look like. Or any other flower that's red. Now, if you want to make something nice and springy, let's try a yellow one. So what we want to do is, I'm going to grab this one and we'll apply some more glue to it, just to the surface of these fibers, like that. And then I've got some yellow flower mix here. This is just ground foam, but it's very fine ground foam. Okay, then tap it out. Like so. And you end up with a very convincing patch of flowers. They could be daffodils, they could be marsh marigolds, they could be dandelions, they could be anything that produces a yellow flower. And so these can be planted all over your model railroad. So we've got yellow and we've got red ones. Right there. Quite effective, I think. Now, let's take a look at another thing you can do, because these are not standing up all that tall. So let me show you how I make tall versions of these. Now for this, I'm going to use Woodland Scenics field grass. And this is their natural straw color, and it's FG171. Unfortunately, I don't have the green version, the number for the green version, which is what I'm going to use here. So it's the same thing. You can get it at most hobby shops that stock the Woodland Scenics line. It's usually there on the shelf somewhere. So let's take a look at that. I just take a bunch of these fibers, get that out of the way so you can see, and then I'm going to bend them over again. I'm going to twist them together at the base. And you want something, reasonably long. In this case, that's probably several feet tall in HO scale. But at any rate, let's go with that as it is. And then I'm going to take these and we're going to paint again parts of it with the glue mixture. Then let's make some red flowers here, some tall poppies, I guess, to help spread them apart so that you've got individual flower stalks. What I do is take a pin or any other sharp object and start at the bottom, just work your way up and separate those strands. So you go from one big clump of fibers with the flowers to multiples. Okay. Now I'm going to do that again here with some more red here. Okay. And so that gives you a nice flower on a stem. So I use these forceps, which are self-closing, so you can pinch them to open them, and then they're spring-loaded and they will close. And then you can just put your flower in there and let them sit to dry like that. Okay, now, so this is the one here that I just made. I'm going to clamp it down like that, and I'm going to dip it in the glue. Okay, so you can see it's got glue here on the base. Here's one here that has had a chance to dry overnight. It's got the glue area here at the bottom that kind of holds it together. So then all you would need to do is glue down your static grass clump, and then once it is dried, you can just take a sharp tool and poke a hole in the center. And that will allow you to plant your flower right smack in the middle of it. Okay, so here's one of these that I've made up a little denser so you can see it. Just put a little bit of glue on the bottom of your flower, and we can press it down into the patch. I think that will give you a better feeling for where it's going to look on the layout. It's, you've got this large mass of leaves down here in the base of the flower, and then you've got your stem with all the individual flowers itself here. So that's one of the things that you can do with this. Why don't we see how this looks with the red, since it's going to stand out, I think, a little bit better. Just poke it down in and there. Okay, so that gives you a fairly effective way of making flowers to go around buildings on your layout. We can put another one here along the side of it. There we go. So there's a couple of different versions of ways that you can use your static grass clumps to make flowers, either very short flowers here or even taller ones that have long stems, such as irises and gladiolus and those kind of things. So give that a try with your static grass applicator. Make some clumps and then make some flowers and have a great spring. So as I said earlier, I think I will probably go ahead and slip in the second part of the DC versus DCC comparison. We'll get that video out to you sometime next week. I just wanted to get this caught up because I had been playing with this static grass applicator and just wanted to share with you the changes that I made and how effective it can be in producing the static grass clumps and making flowers on your own. So that's it for this week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guy. Bye now.